Hey everyone, what's up? This is Uri for GTO Wizard, and in this video I'm going to show you how to crush people who range bet small. So let's get into it. So the key to beating any strategy is first of all to understand it. And in order to understand the strategy of range betting small, I'm going to ask you a simple question, and that's, if we're optimizing for a hand group, say either big hands like ace-8 or ace-king on this board, ace-8 deuce, or medium to small hands like pocket nines, pocket sixes, king-queen high, which type of hands do you think the small bet optimizes for? And the answer to this is very clearly the small hands, right? Ace-king and ace-8, they want big pots, they want to bet big. Something like nines would really kind of appreciate a smaller bet size. So the first key bit to understand about the small bet strategy is that it's centered around small hands. And in poker, a lot of the dance is how do I get a lot of money in with my big hands without leaving my little hands to face up so they get run over. And one way to do this is just chunking everything together, so betting everything. Here I forced the solver to bet everything, and once your opponent calls and you get a turn card, you now separate your range into two bits, which I'll show you guys how to do. And it's very, very straightforward and very particular to this kind of strategy where after the small flop bet, now, anything like nines or a pair of eights or sevens, there's a very clear-cut differentiation. Now we bet. This is called a polarized bet. So very, very big or check, and all our medium strength hands get to the river. So this is the idea of a small bet strategy. Now, how do you beat people once you understand this idea? There are actually a few different segments to beating and a few different types of mistakes that you might be making. Mistake number one is folding too much. When your opponent bets small, it's very important that you're aware of a concept called the backdoor equity or backdoor draws. Just continuing with pairs and draws and maybe high card hands isn't enough. And I'll show you guys this quickly on the solver where you can see a hand like 10-9 just continuing on ace-8 deuce rainbow. This is 3 to a straight. Jack 10 is almost 3 to a straight, but it can make gut shots on both ends. A hand like 9-7 is always continuing. A hand like 6-7 can continue, and a hand like 6-5 can even continue. And this is due to the backdoor equity. So these hands can turn draws. Similarly, all sorts of hands with backdoor flush draws, even as weak as 9-5 suited or 7-4 suited, get to continue versus a small bet. Now, if you're not aware that you can continue with these types of hands, there's a very high likelihood these small bets are running you over. So first step to countering the small bets is to continue with a wide calling range. Second step to continuing versus a small bet is your raising range. Now, I already said this is meant to optimize for your opponent's weak to medium strength hands. And if we don't raise aggressively, they get to see the river kind of cheap with any hand that they want. So what the computer does to counter this is it has a very aggressive check raising strategy with both a lot of bluffs, a lot of value hands, a lot of backdoor draws, not in addition to draws, especially on these kinds of dry boards. So this awareness of backdoor draws is important, but there are also some hands that are not actually looking to put a stack in. And here we would see something like ace-6, ace-9 suited, 8-9 suited. Of course, pair of deuces is generally looking to bluff, and a pair of eights is at times too. It depends on the run out. But the idea with these hands is we can attack the weak to medium strength hands. It doesn't have to be by putting our stack in. It just needs to be by putting more money in with a better hand. So something like ace-6 would go check raise. And then how do you play it later? Well, just as though the pot is the size you got to, and this is your hand strength, so very likely check the turn and then maybe throw in a small value bet on the river. Of course, if you turn the 6, things change, and yeah, that's part of the game, constantly reevaluating your hand. So the number 2 thing is you want to be check raising aggressively, including a bit merged and including backdoor draws. And this denies your opponent the ability to see the river for free. Now, I'll throw in a caveat that if you're going to check raise, you better know how to play the turn, and you can study this with GTO Wizard. Most hands tend to play rather intuitively, but understanding which turn cards are good or bad for each player helps to manage your frequencies in these spots. Okay, so third key to beating the guys who range bet is to recognize that these guys have kind of pulled a trick. So they took their weak hands, they bet them along with the strong hands on the flop. But then once they check the turn, generally speaking, they get to the river with a very weak range. Now, the computer will actually check back stronger than most humans will, but in practice, most guys keep betting all their good hands, check back, a range that's very centered on 3s through kings and 8x and king highs. And the third key here is just to be extremely aggressive on the river. And here you see an example of the solver going for a pot-sized bet with most top pairs, going for quite a few bluffs. And if I were to input multiple sizes, which I'll do right now, you'll actually see that there's also this wide swath of middle pairs, which are also betting small to punish your opponent for all the 7s and 5s and 4s and 6x and king highs that he got to the river with. So very wide, very aggressive betting, and the less your opponent is trapping, the more you can actually size up these bets even bigger and even have overbets. So the key thing is that you recognize that the weakness in the strategy is at 2 points. Number one, when they bet the flop, there are a lot of weak hands in there. And number two, once they check back the turn, they get to the river with quite a lot of weak hands. And these would be the pressure points where we can try to take advantage of the strategy. Whereas when they bet the turn big, that's just a very strong range, and there's not much you can do there other than hope that you have a good hand and fold quite often the rest of the time. So that's it for this video. I hope that understanding the big picture idea behind range betting, as well as 3 different counters to it, is helpful for you guys. I know a lot of people implement this strategy and encounter this strategy without really knowing the big picture, and I always find that these kinds of things help. So hope you enjoyed it. Like and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys next time.